GPS is Gigi's personal services. She's an RV expert with over 3 decades of experience. To learn more, visit thervadvisor.com today.
This is the RV Advisor Podcast with your host, Tom Alexander. Get all the latest information, trends, advice from experts, stories from the road, and more in the world of recreational vehicles. Now, here's Tom.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the RV Advisor Podcast. I'm Tom Alexander. My guest today is Van Russell. And
hello.
Van, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it is great to have you. Van, of course, short for Vanessa. And and Vanessa is currently in Central Florida with her family in her RV, and they're from Adventure Detours. That's where you can find them, the Adventure Detour, right?
Yes, the Adventure
at
Detour.
Instagram. And of course, you have a website as well, but we'll talk about all that stuff in just a little bit. But you're doing well there in Central Florida?
We are. The weather is finally cooled down this summer. I thought we were going to die of a heat stroke every day, but it's nice now.
Yeah, it's getting nice. It's finally, we're starting to hit that stretch where we get into the few months that really matter here to us Floridians, because it's no secret that I spent the first 32 years of my life in Pennsylvania, where winters are largely unpleasant if you don't like cold weather, and I don't. So
I don't either.
Yeah, moving to Florida was the money move, but the summers you have to endure a little bit to get to the real prime weather.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So you originally from Kansas City, Missouri, but you've been on the road for, you told me, 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years.
Wow.
It's a long time, and it's amazing to me how much RVing full time has changed, in those 6 years. Huge difference, but it's been a blast.
Yeah, and you've probably seen a lot more RVs on the road in those 6 years. In other words, it's the number of folks growing that are really into it, right?
Yes. And, I love it because I love seeing people making memories and traveling and enjoying themselves outdoors, because that's what we all love so much about this lifestyle. But it's crazy. It gets difficult to make reservations sometimes. And it's really changed. You can't just go on the fly anymore, decide to stay when you love a place anymore. It can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah. I've you're not the first to say that. That's kind of becoming a thing. It's doing things on a whim is not quite as painless as it used to be. Because you're a lot of folks have the same idea, and you wind up things sometimes get a little overcrowded.
They do.
And what's amazing is that the pandemic, which so many of us thought would really bite into all kinds of stuff within the RV industry, really it just exploded. I mean,
definitely.
Folks are on the road more than ever. They're buying, renting more than ever. It's really become a huge phenomenon.
It's awesome. It's like everyone took a chance to say, this is what I really want to do. I really want to get out there and live and explore, and they're just going for it. And I think it's great.
Yeah. Now there's 3 of you. Your son and daughter travel with you and live on the road with you. Any pets along for the ride as well?
No pets. I would love to have one, but I think it would make it a lot more complicated for us to be gone all day like we often are. So no pets right now.
Gotcha. And you work from your motorhome, from your RV?
I do. Well, we're bloggers on our website that you mentioned. Yeah. And we road school, as some people refer to it, with our
road
daughter.
School, yeah.
And we left road school. Yeah. Which is basically just homeschool on the road, and it looks totally different for every single family. But it's been an amazing educational experience for all of us just to go to all these places,
Yeah, that's part of the education, a great education. And your daughter's taken to road schooling pretty well?
She loves it. Well, we left when she was 6, so it's kind of been her whole homeschool
Yeah, like
experience
since
this
first
far.
grade, probably right through where she is now. She's in
Yeah,
sixth grade now.
6. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
in 6 now, so that's kind
yeah.
of all she knows.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And we've said this so many times on the show because we've had so many families that do exactly what you're doing. And so much of the
Mhm.
education is the travel itself, the places, the destinations, the journey, the history,
Yes.
the culture, the
Yes.
people. It's just
Right.
right.
Yeah. And
Hey,
really
guess.
for us adults too.
Sure, of course. It's like not only do you tell them about the Alamo, you take them there. I mean, it's that kind
Right.
of a
That's
thing,
right.
right? Uh, uh,
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm shocked by what we never learned in school. It's like, wow.
yeah. Just tell us. I'll tell you what. Let's take a quick break because I want to hear about some of the places you've been and those experiences
Okay.
specifically. Because that's I find that
Mhm.
stuff fascinating, and I know our viewers and listeners do as well. So let's take a break. We're speaking with Van Russell, the Adventure Detour, and that's the place to go on Instagram. And did I get that right? The Adventure Detour.
Yep. The Adventure
Okay, there we
Detour.
go. Okay, when I start having to commit things to memory, it can often, go off road sometimes. I have to be careful. We'll be back in just a minute. This is the RV Advisor podcast. Stay
Watch Just Ask Gigi with Gigi Stetler and Tom Alexander. It posts every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on our Facebook page.
We are back on the RV Advisor podcast. I'm Tom Alexander, and my guest is Van Russell. And Van is from the Adventure Detour. And that's, well, you can find it, Van. I guess you said you have a website with that name as well as the Instagram
Right.
page, right?
Right. Yep. TheAdventureDetour.com. Mm-hmm.
Okay. TheAdventureDetour.com. And of course, at Instagram, / The Adventure Detour. And, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the background and I could see you've got looks like a long hallway in the back behind you. Tell us a little bit about what you're living in and riding around in these days.
Sure. This is actually our second rig. We had a 40-foot fifth wheel that we bought new for the first 3 years of our touring around. And it was a rear bunk for my daughter to have a bedroom with 2 bathrooms, which was great. But the living space was small. It felt cramped for us. So we decided to switch rigs and get a mid bunk version. So what you see in the hallway back here is actually her bunk room with a loft above the top, and it's in the middle of the rig, like right when you walk in the door. This is a Grand Design Solitude.
Grand Design Solitude. Excellent. Excellent.
Mhm.
So,
And it's a hair bigger. It's for like 42 feet long. So it's just a
wow.
hair bigger, which I thought wasn't a big deal, but actually it's a huge deal. It's so much harder to maneuver than 40 foot. And I wish we would have gone smaller now
Yeah.
instead of bigger.
When that rolls into town, right? You know it.
Big
Yeah.
time.
Here they come.
Yes, yes.
Here come the Russells.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's funny because when you live in your rig, you need a balance between I want to get it in everywhere that I want to stay,
uh,
but yet I need some space to actually live and have all my junk. And that's kind of where it gets a little gray which way to go with a rig.
yeah, yeah. It's weird because there's that fine line of wanting to, kind of pare down and and then if you love stuff, making that transition
Right.
from right, yeah, making the transition from bricks and mortar to living on the road like this. Like, what stays, what goes, and I'm sure all that.
Yeah.
I haven't had to make that decision because I live in bricks and mortar, but it's I just I don't know what I would. First of all, I'm a pack rat. Not good if you want to be on the road. Not good.
No.
So yeah, I don't think I would be a candidate for. I would certainly love to do the 2-week getaway. That's a different story. That I would enjoy. But to make a full time, I'd have a hard time getting rid of my stuff. I just, oh man. Anyway,
well,
tale for another day.
Luckily, my parents are nice enough to hold a bunch of our junk for us.
Oh well, that's good. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we mentioned, you chatted earlier before the break about, the education aspect and being on the road and everything and seeing different things. And you also said, hey, we learn too, not just our daughter, we're gaining a great education as well on these. Give us one or two spots that you visited that really were, the takeaway was just something special.
Okay. Well, there's some spots that blow you away culturally where you're like, the whole vibe of this place is something I never anticipated. And then there's some of those places you go to geographically where you're like, I had no idea there were volcanoes here and lava tubes and even mountains in this area and springs, hot springs. So you have both of those that just blow our mind. So I would say Maine was probably the biggest cultural place that we went to where you just completely felt like you were transported somewhere else, with the lobster boats and the beautiful rocky coasts and the lighthouses. And Oregon is a little similar to that on the West Coast, but something specific about Maine that is hard to put your finger on that was just a complete cultural shift, and we love it. We've spent 2 summers in Maine and Acadia National Park, and that's our top spot for the summer, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
Now then you have on the West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Oregon and you mentioned Maine and similarities. And one thing that's another similarity is they both have a Portland, which is interesting. There's
yes, I know that funny. We've been to both, and I was like, oh yeah, Portland.
Yeah.
I know. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But then on the West Coast, speaking of Oregon, finding out that there's lava tubes and all the volcanic features that were here. I only knew of Hawaii having that, and then we show up on the West Coast and we're going through these lava caves and seeing these hot springs that you can go jump into. And I just never, being from the Midwest, I just never knew that this stuff was even in our country. I feel so silly saying that, but really cool experiences.
Well, don't feel silly because, this is a huge, even the lower 48, take away Hawaii and Alaska, but for a second,
right.
The lower 48, there's just so much diversity. I mean, we've got tropics here in South Florida. You got almost what equates to a rainforest in the Pacific Northwest. Deserts, you've got all kinds of terrain, and there's so much diversity. It's just it's an amazing country, just geographically, beyond all the history and culture and people and things to do. Just geographically, it's astounding.
It is. It's really beautiful. I mean, I've always thought about exploring other countries and maybe touring through Europe at some point. But honestly, there's so much in this country. Even after 6 years of doing this, my list just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to do. Before we go, I know you have something that you want to share with our audience, and by all means, let's hear about your product.
Sure. When we talked about how it's getting harder and harder to make RV reservations now that RVing's become so popular. So that's the double-edged sword. We're glad so many people are getting into it, but it's really hard to make reservations. So over the last few years, we've kind of gathered a few tricks that have helped us to get reservations when they're booked already in state parks and national parks, the places that everybody really wants to get into. So I created a free guide, which has all my tips and tricks on how we've been able to score cancellations and other ways to get really hard reservations in state parks and national parks. And so you can go to our blog, which is about RVing and US travel. It's at theadventuredetour.com. And there you will find our free guide on booking state park and national park reservations.
Excellent. I said product, but it's really a service. That's terrific.
Yeah.
The adventure detour.com, the adventuredetour.com.
Yes,
that's the place to go. And
Mhm.
that's terrific.
Sure.
Free guide right there.
Yeah, I mean, just even last week we scored a state park down in the Florida Keys called Curry Hammock, which pretty much everybody wants to stay there, or the one down the street, Bahia Honda. And we've gotten both using these tricks. So very, very helpful information, and I hope it helps your listeners.
I'm sure it will. Well, Van, we really appreciate your time today, coming on, joining us, and we'd love to have you back, and make sure your husband makes it next time. We got to get him on, and
Yes.
I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing humor and laughs and everything that he can bring to we got to experience this firsthand, so the next time you guys come on,
Oh yeah.
we'll get him on. What's his name?
His name is Scott, and he's definitely a jokester.
Scott the jokester next time right here on the pod.
Yes.
We'll do everything we can to get him on. All right. Well, Van, thank you so much. Safe travels. Thank you for joining us. Lots of fun visiting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. You take care.
You as well. This is the RV Advisor podcast. We'll be back to wrap things up right after these words.
Here are 5 words every RV enthusiast should know: advocacy, community, education, resources, rewards. That's what the RV Advisor was built on, along with protecting your rights. Visit thervadvisor.com.
Wrapping things up now on the RV Advisor podcast. Tom Alexander with Neve Carey-Zacco, and of course a special appearance by the wonderful Darcy, who's asleep. Hey, Darcy, there she is, asleep. Okay, well, that's okay. Somebody has to sleep, and she got the job. So
exactly.
We'll leave it at that. We had an amazing event this past weekend at the at Planet RV, and of course the RV Advisor and all the great companies under the big umbrella there on Griffin Road in Dania, Florida, where we are headquartered. I know you were there. You had a great time. Exciting.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful new location. I'm super excited. So next week, I hope to do some Instagram lives to show people around and get to talk with Gigi. So she's all on board. So you're going to see more of us next week for that.
Excellent. And of course, this week is the holiday. It's Thanksgiving coming up this Thursday. We won't have a new show on Friday after. We'll have a repeat, but we'll be back the following week with a brand new RV Advisor podcast. Neve, have a great Thanksgiving.
You too, Tom.
Thank you. And we'll see you soon. We wish all our viewers and listeners a great Thanksgiving. For Neve Carey-Zacco, I'm Tom Alexander. So long, everybody.